Welcome to Pick Me Up, I'm Scared, the podcast.
I'm your host, Madeline.
And I'm your co-host, Kenna.
All right, Kenna, today I would like to ask, when you were a teenager, did you hang out at the mall?
No.
Not at all?
I'm from a small town. There was no mall.
Oh, that's right. You guys had to drive into the local mall, right?
Yeah, like you had to drive, like either 30 minutes to Pueblo or and the mall there isn't that great, or you had to drive an hour to Colorado Springs. So instead of hanging out at the mall, the town I am from is very beautiful, weird. It's just so weird, but it's extremely beautiful. So we just hung out down by the river.
I love it. It's so far removed from my upbringing. The closest thing we had to anybody hanging out down by a river was these two guys I know made their own raft out of trash and tried to sail it down a canal through the middle of the city. And then it sunk and they just got covered in canal water. But everyone was broke, so they only had one pair of shoes each. So they had to wear their dirty canal shoes every single day. And they smelled so fucking bad. And I'd be in physics class in high school, just Trevor, why the fuck are you wearing your canal shoes? And he'd be like, these Airwalks are the only shoes I have. And I'd be like, go barefoot, man. It's disgusting. You can't do this to us.
Yeah, we literally we hung out by a beautiful river, or that was there was a bridge where you could jump off of. It was very it was very bucolic. There was mountains and stuff, but it was funny because it's this nature background with just people drinking 40s and smoking weed.
I feel that's if you ever go to a river, that's what they're doing. If I've been camping and I've been oh, there's a river nearby, and I've gone to it, it's all the locals are just getting annihilated on a giant rock.
Yeah.
You know?
Basically that, but it was alt teens.
I like that.
And if my mom is listening, we did not do that.
No, you were safe and sober.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I definitely hung out at the mall, which I've talked about before. And I think the first time I ever went to the mall just to hang out, I was in the 6th grade, and my friends and I all got ready at one of their houses, and we put on our freakiest outfits, and we shared the same black eyeliner pencil, and we got on a city bus and all took it to the mall together, just yeah, we look cool, you know? Yeah.
I would have loved to do that. There was, the equivalent was me and all the freaky kids would dress up and sometimes go to the movies together.
Yeah,
but there was similar. There was one movie theater in town, so it'd be we all dressed up all freaky to go see the first Star Wars movie, the one with Anakin and Jar Jar Binks.
Wow, it's a very goth movie.
I'm betraying my age. Saw it in the theater.
Okay, so that would be similar to what we did. We had movie theaters in all of our malls too. Yeah. But mostly we would just go to Hot Topic, do some light shoplifting, stop by the food court, look through all the posters at Spencer's Gifts. But we'd be there for hours just hanging out. And I always wanted to work at Hot Topic, obviously. And I've talked about this before, but when I got my work permit at age 14, I applied there and at Hot Dog on a Stick, compulsively at Hot Dog on a Stick, just over and over and over again.
Because the outfit is cool.
Because the outfit's so sick. Hot Dog on a Stick when we were young was the cool thing.
That's so strange to me. Actually all the cool girls at my high school worked at KFC.
Whoa.
And I was no thank you, because it was a death trap, because my dad still talks about this. He's it's notorious, the KFC's floor was notoriously so slippery and greasy that I believe you would go in there and slip, it was ice skating rink, and I believe it caught on fire because of the grease trap.
That is disgusting, but also intriguing.
I was also, I believe, vegan, so I was I'm not working there.
Yeah, well, Hot Dog on a Stick was cool because if you were a vegetarian, you could just get the cheese on a stick. It was a grilled cheese on a stick.
I've never had hot dog on a stick.
Oh my god, it's fucked up good. But the reason why I liked Hot Dog on a Stick is there was some punk overlap with Hot Dog on a Stick. There was that Vandal song, Cafe 405, about having a crush on a girl who works at Hot Dog on a Stick.
Oh my god, that's so cute.
Yeah, it's cute, and the lyrics are Watching her at the mall, she don't know me at all. You don't remember this? Hope no employee over here.
Okay, so my punk, I did not listen to a lot of like traditional punk until very recently, so that is a big hole in my musical knowledge.
Okay, well, the Vandals are not great, so you didn't miss out on much.
Wait, they're from the OC, right?
Yeah, they are. And they actually started out as like an original punk band because Drew, my partner who passed away, used to play with them like in the early 80s, just a little bit here and there, but it never really worked out. But they've been around for forever. But he and I went and saw them maybe 10 years ago, and they were playing this one song, and he was like, this is the weirdest shit I've ever seen. Nobody in this band is from the original lineup. We wrote that song about one of our friends. Not a single guy in this band knows that that's a real guy they're singing about, and he was our friend.
Whoa.
Yeah. But so they've been around a long time, but they've like just changed a lot of members. But they're bad in a fun way, you know?
Oh.
Like I would still listen to them. But yeah, anyway, I was too freaky looking for Hot Dog on a Stick, and Hot Dog on a Stick did like not understand why like all the punk like weirdo people were into them. They were just like, no, like we're not gonna hire you. What is happening? But at age 15, Hot Topic finally hired me, and all my dreams came true. But now, like, going to the mall, it just doesn't feel the same as it did when I was a kid. They've kind of lost some of their wonder. They've lost some of their social currency. Like, we had whole subcultures that revolved around them. We had the Valley Girl. We had the mall rat. We had the mall goth. That was all like in the 80s and 90s. And we had teen movies where pivotal character development took place at the mall. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, like Mean Girls. It seems like all these eras, the mall was like so important to like character building and like identity. Now, though, they seem to be less and less something that people and communities identify with.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Even though I am from a small town and we didn't hang out at the mall, like going to the mall was still a big deal because it's like that's the only place you could get like, you know, like Nirvana tees or like goth stuff. Like I was particularly into Morbid Threads.
Oh yeah,
that was my jam.
That. Yeah.
And like that's how I found out about like goth music and Cleopatra Records, because there was a $2 Cleopatra Records sampler by the Hot Topic case. I mean, like it, like all the kids from my hometown would go to the mall and like get stuff, but you would just have to drive a while. But it was like, it was a big deal. Like,
yeah, it was something that seemed important to like your identity and like figuring out who you were. And
yeah, you were either Hot Topic, you were Gap, you were the big one when I was in middle school and high school, also in Colorado, was Abercrombie.
Same for us. Yeah,
that was the biggest. Like if you were a preppy, which is basically not a freak.
Yeah,
like it. And if you were a freak, you were not into sports or like looked normal.
Yes.
And like now preppy we would consider like basic. That would be right. I think roughly the equivalent. But anyway, if you were preppy, you shopped at Abercrombie and Fitch, maybe Old Navy, because Old Navy was kind of new. Oh yeah, what about Hollister though? Did you guys have Hollister? No. Okay, so ours were Abercrombie and Hollister. And I worked at Hot Topic, and I had a high school boyfriend who was super like jock, and it was really funny that we dated for a while. And he worked at Hollister. But he was like punk inside. Like one day I went to go see him on his lunch break at the mall, and he wasn't there, and I called him and he was like, yeah, I just quit. And I was like, what do you mean you quit? And he's like, yeah, I just left on my lunch break and decided I didn't like that place, so I'm not going back anymore. And he was I was like, wow, that's the most punk thing that's ever happened in a Hollister, I think. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the other big brand, American Eagle. Oh, that was also huge. Yeah, that too. Yes. I feel like I'm like, very important. These were important. Because they were important. They are coming back. But it's interesting, though, because it's like, yeah, the mall was like a vehicle through which we aligned ourselves with brands, obviously, right? Like, it's consumerism, it's capitalism. But also, there was some element of, like, even aligning yourself with a brand could be subversive or counterculture. Like, I was Betsy Johnson. Like, oh, yeah, that was the weirdo girl brand. When I would visit my aunt and uncle in Houston, I would go to the Galleria, first stop, Betsy Johnson store. And I would buy the cheapest thing in the store. Yeah. So, obviously, today we're talking about malls. Yay! Yeah. Or aw. So, Kenna, what's like your overall assessment of malls? Do you think it's like a dystopian capitalist consumer hell, or like a fun, open community space where you can just hang out with no obligation to purchase, or somewhere in between? What are your thoughts? Both. Like, I think it's like, okay, because like I have had the funnest time going with, even as an adult, like going with my buddies and going to the mall and getting like a pretzel and a boba and like going to like just like stupid little like going to Sephora and like, you know, you just like talk and walk around and you see people. Like it weirdly feels like community even though you're not really interacting with anybody. And to me it would be just so lovely if you could just like get what you needed without having to purchase anything or use money, or like where people who worked at the mall just wanted to be there because it was fun. And like, but yeah, on the other hand, it is a dystopian capitalist hellscape where it's just like it can be so stressful, especially like around the holidays. Like you feel the pressure to like buy something, like you're going to the mall to, like for me, like, you know, it's stressful. Like if you're like, oh, I need something for, let's say like a wedding or something. So you gotta look somewhat presentable so your aunt does not disown you.
Right.
So it's like, oh, well, I gotta find this. And it's like, it's like stressful, or like you like need to find something to like complete yourself. You're like, well, if I don't buy this perfume, I won't smell nice and then no one will like me.
Yeah, I also think what's interesting is that the less money you have, the more stressful it is to go shopping. Like, when you have money, it's, like, fun. You know, you ever get, like, a bonus check and you're like, I'm gonna go blow it, you know? And then you're like, this is fun. I have money. But, like, how often do you actually have money to just, like, go have fun buying things?
Like, once a year, maybe?
Yeah, it's, like, not a very common thing.
Yeah, for a while, never.
Yeah, right, exactly. Me, never.
I mean, last year, we went to the mall. It was really fun.
It was so fun. We did that for a bonus at work. We had a little extra money, and everyone went shopping, and we all got, like, maybe a $200 gift.
It was so fun.
It was really
fun.
And it was something we wouldn't usually buy ourselves.
No, I got a really cute pair of Docs.
Yeah, and I got perfume.
I'm like, it smells so good.
Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I think it falls somewhere in between. On a good day, I'm like, the mall, such a beautiful place. Like, elderly people can go walking in the mornings. Like, kids can hang out in relative safety, unsupervised. Everything you need is in walking distance. There's even, like, a disability advocate on TikTok, Crutches and Spice, who once explained that they're one of the few places in the U.S. that are legally required to be handicap accessible at the size they are, meaning disabled people can go use them as a public space. But then on a bad day, I'm like, malls are the late capitalist dystopian nightmare, and I hate them.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same.
Right. And there's actually a reason for that duality that might have a lot to do with their history.
Oh.
So starting off, we're going to get into the history. And long before the fluorescent lit shopping malls of the United States, like before there were, you know, kind of like malls as we think of them today, where they're all kind of enclosed inside of like the one building, you know, there were just marketplaces, which aren't fundamentally any different from malls, except just in scale. They're designed to serve communities by allowing local merchants to pitch their wares, right? Like a market, like you think of an outdoor marketplace.
Yeah, like when I like the flea market.
Yeah,
or like going to a farmer's market.
Exactly. So these things, you know, kind of existed, but before money, like non-commercial quasi-markets existed and facilitated an exchange of gifts between people and even between two different communities with different types of goods. So it would be similar to like a commercial market, but you wouldn't really have money exchanged. So even Encyclopedia Britannica like has this pretty punk explanation of how these non-commercial market exchanges work. And it says that honor lies in giving, receiving imposes a burden. There is competition to see who can show the most generosity, not who can make the biggest gain.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's kind of how they like defined these pre-money kind of marketplaces that existed, which I thought was pretty interesting. I like that. And even in like ye old Encyclopedia Britannica, they acknowledge that great, complex, and wealthy civilizations arose without commerce as we think of it today. Instead, there was a network of supply and distribution that operated through an administrative system. Even throughout history, people have said that Persian society, for example, had no commercial marketplaces.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool, right? It's kind of like how you're talking about, like, what if you could go to the mall and just get things without money?
Yeah, that's I've thought about since I was a kid. Like, what if you could just walk in there and get what you wanted and go out?
Right. And when we look at like the evolution of these types of like non-commerce exchanges into what we think of as commerce today, we have to acknowledge that commerce specifically refers to like exchanging goods to get money or more purchasing power via profit. And that can only happen with money because money provides a store of value, which we referenced in our episode Free Craigslist for President, which was all about non-monetary economies. So we've got this gifting economy going on for a while. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, money starts to get used by people in power. And this starts to change how goods move through society. And historians think that there were 3 different places that commercial marketplaces, as we think of them today, really started to emerge. So the first one is in rural fairs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, right?
Like a run fair. No, I'm sorry.
But IRL.
That's what I keep thinking about. I've never been.
Oh my God, we have to go.
I know.
Yeah, but in systems of feudalism, a farmer or whatever would grow food to feed his family, extra to pay the landlord, and extra to pay back any debts he owed his community. And in that David Graeber book, Debt, The First 5,000 Years, he talks about how debt was always kind of a part of society, especially for the farmer, because there was a time in between the crops being planted and the crops being harvested, and in that time, the communities took care of the farmer with the understanding that when the crops were harvested, the farmer would take care of them. But in a world where money was like being used more readily, there existed an opportunity to earn extra money in exchange for excess harvest. And this is where these local rural fairs kind of emerged. So I do kind of think of these like the farmers markets today, which you referenced earlier. You could go to a local rural fair and sell or buy things along with the other people there. The second place we saw commercial marketplaces arising is in landlordship. Yeah, so rent was originally paid in grain, and when money came along, that grain needed to be converted to whatever the currency was. And this meant that the grain needed to be sold to be turned into cash, which the landlord would then use to fund things like their own private armies. Very, very scary. But also other random shit that just like fit into the landlord's lifestyle, like art or goods. And this meant that these like little economies developed around landlords because, let's say you make like really bomb furniture, for example, and then some rich dude is like, I need really bomb furniture. You're going to want to get close to him, right? Because you're going to want to be like, look at my furniture I make. Pay me for my furniture. So then the third place that we saw markets emerge was in international trade, obviously, right? Like trade between different types of communities has always been a thing. It makes sense. Like, you live where this thing I like grows. I live where this thing you like grows. So let's exchange them. And as early as 400 BC, there was the Royal Road, which was 1,600 miles long and connected present-day Iran to present-day Turkey. And there were even offshoots that went to like India and Africa. And by the 1st century BC, trade routes between different places had started to grow more complex and commonplace. So Kenna, do you remember what the Silk Road is? Like the real one, not like the dark web website?
It's like, oh, you mean Bitcoin?
No.
No, the Silk Road, I feel like in history class it had something to do with Marco Polo.
Yeah, it was like a network of trade routes that connected China with the Middle East and even Europe. And most people think it came around when the Han Dynasty in China officially opened up trade with the West in the year 130 BC.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously they weren't calling it the Silk Road then. That's just a name that some dead white guy came up with for it in 1877. And I kind of think that the name sounds a little Orientalist to me personally. It's a little weird. But whatever the case, these huge trade routes became increasingly popular, facilitating both trade and imperialism. Things sold on these routes during this time include fruit and vegetable, livestock, grain, leather, hides, tools, religious objects, spices, paper, gunpowder, artwork, precious stones and metals, and yes, some silk. Paper, though, to me is the most interesting part of these trade routes because paper was invented in China, and when it arrived in Europe, it allowed written word to happen there for the first time, which was obviously a massive development for European cultures. So I like this because next time you see like a weird old racist relative complain about China while reading a newspaper, you get to tell them that they wouldn't even have newspapers if it weren't for China. I like that. At any rate, international trade became more advanced, and marketplaces as we think of them today, which were like centralized areas with lots of merchants selling goods from booth type things, they kind of popped up naturally along these trade routes, allowing merchants to buy and sell with each other, as well as with like the local communities there. And these were like kind of bazaars as we think of them in the Middle East, which can be dated back to the 4th century, and they hinged upon these trade routes. And these marketplaces were pretty well managed by communities. Like there were unspoken rules and regulations and just like a general idea of proper conduct. In medieval Europe, they even had this idea of just price, which meant that everything had to be sold at a rate that was sufficient enough to provide a good quality of life to the merchants and the people who had produced it. And that shit was pretty chill for like a while until imperialism really started to take off, and we saw things like the East India Trading Company develop in the year 1600, right? Which was obviously a British trading company that grew so powerful and ruthless that it became the de facto dictatorship in India for a while. We mentioned in our episode Surf Punks versus Capitalism that the first Indian word that entered the English language was loot. And that's because these British traders were notorious for stealing shit from India. He even had a private army to help facilitate this trade, which was mostly just theft. And, of course, we saw mercantilism give way to Adam Smith's version of capitalism, and industrialization took off. And commerce evolved into the shit show we now see today, with that profit incentive as God, and the average worker being collateral damage in the fight for the right to get richer by cutting costs and raising prices. So the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul, Turkey is perhaps the closest look we have into what markets looked like before capitalism as we think of it today. In 1453, Constantinople was conquered by Mehmet II, who rebuilt the city into Istanbul, making it the capital city of the Ottoman Empire. In 1455, he ordered a covered market be built, called at that time a Bedestan. In 1461, construction started on the Grand Bazaar, with the goal being to unite people around a central hub of a city. According to Turkish conservationist Selik Gülseroy, there is no doubt that in its foundation and source, there is the quality found in the type of community that has newly left the nomadic life and has started to live in the city in a more settled way. As Lapham's Quarterly explains, by the 16th century, the bazaar housed much of the empire's treasury, its jewels and weapons. The Ottomans liked the idea of concentrating trade in one place as a guarantee against theft, and the labyrinthine layout and thick walls of the bazaar made it an especially safe place in the city. Guards employed by the artisan guilds patrolled the streets of the bazaar, and the entire place shut down for the evening. Eventually, there appeared coffee shops and tea shops, sherbet sellers, and simit sellers, as well as beautiful upper-class women seeing and wanting to be seen in a high-end spot where, because of the bazaar's security and association with wealth, they could feel safe. So basically, the idea of these centralized covered shopping centers spread along trade routes, that eventually made its way all the way to Paris. And Paris created this thing called the Passage... Oh my gosh, I can't do the French. Passage du Caire, which I'm guessing is like the Passage of Cairo, inspired by these Middle Eastern bazaars and Asian trade routes. And that happened in 1798. And the name itself references Napoleon's obsession with Egypt and Asia. And the Grand Bazaar itself still operates in Istanbul today. And the mall has around 3,600 shops selling wares like jewelry and carpets. And today it remains one of the most popular shopping destinations in the world, with over 91 million annual shoppers. However, it's worth noting that 90% of those visitors are foreign to Turkey and are not actually Turkish people. Today, Turkish people are more likely to shop just in modern malls. So what exactly is a modern mall? Like, what do you think of when you think about a mall?
There's probably a couple flagship stores, like a department store like Macy's or like a JCPenney, Sears. Wow, really dating myself.
Are they both out of business now, JCPenney and Sears?
I don't know about JCPenney's, but Sears for sure.
Wow.
And like there's a couple like chains. I feel like there's always like a Gap or like some sort of clothing stores. There's always like a food court with like pretzel place. Oh, wow, I got pretzels on the mind.
Yeah, that actually sounds really good to me too.
But basically, like couple stories, huge parking lot. Maybe if it's fancy, there's like an ice skating rink in the middle.
Oh yeah. That's very specific, but actually it's something that I reference later, so that's funny. So yeah, Turkish scholar Nurdian Gerbilek, I believe, describes them as a pilgrimage to commodity.
Wow.
Which I kind of love. That's like a really good definition. And malls, as we think of them today, seem distinctly Western compared to the bazaars and shopping centers of Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. But if you ask me why, what makes them different, I think I would have a hard time explaining. Like, maybe it's just Americentric thinking, or maybe it has to do with our ideas of modernization, and the United States just happens to be like a relatively younger nation. Or maybe it's because of the American idea of a mall being just like actually a very different thing that's less tied to community, less open to haggling, less likely to be occupied by individual merchants, and more likely to be occupied by like huge faceless megacorps. Like, you don't haggle with your neighbor at a mall for the best price on a rug, right?
No,
you go into a sleek corporate shop where everything has been market tested for your approval, and you just pay the price on the tag.
Yeah, and I don't think I've ever been in a store in the mall where the person who owned the store worked there.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is a big difference. They're like more corporate here, more distance.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely probably are malls where there's like little shops where maybe it's, proprietor run, but like, yeah, for the most part, it's like, Yeah, like at Abercrombie, which it's
Right.
like the workers there are part of some faceless corporation.
Yeah, I think the only thing I can think of that like maybe is a store that's owned by just the independent person is have you ever been to in Little Tokyo? There's the place where they sell the teapots and the little plates on the first floor,
No.
kind of by the Daiso.
No.
Oh, I think, okay, it's a really cute store, and I think that's independently owned, but that's literally the only one I can think of that I've ever been in. So, yeah, the American Mall, it just brings something different to mind. And as we think of, like, American malls today, they actually started more as uncovered outdoor enterprises, usually stemming from strip malls, like with a grocery store anchoring a small row of smaller shops side by side. And most historians think that the first American shopping mall was actually the Outdoors Country Club Plaza, founded by the J.C. Nichols Company in Kansas City, Missouri in 1922. And when I read about this thing, it kind of sounds like the Americana or like the Grove if you're in Los Angeles.
Gotcha.
How would you describe the Grove to somebody who's never been to LA?
The Grove, I haven't been to the Grove very often. I've been to the Americana more, but basically it's like there's like a little pathway. Sorry, maybe pathway isn't the word, but like I feel like there's like a little fountain or like, and then like a little streetcar going around. This is at the Americana, and then sidewalks outside. So you're walking outside along the sidewalk and you go into the store from outside. Like the stores are not connected by any sort of inside walkway.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always think of it like if you were at the shopping part of Disneyland.
Yes.
And there's no rides.
If you've, what's that place that's right outside of Disneyland?
That
you don't have to pay a ticket to go into?
I don't remember what it's called.
What is that called? It's like Disney something.
Yeah, it's like this, I don't know. It's like a street with a bunch of shops outside of it.
Yeah,
like
it's
a movie theater and stuff.
It is kind of like Disneyland though.
Right?
Where like you're outside and you just like walk into a place and there's like little things going on outside, like some shrubbery happening.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah, there are shrubberies and like maybe like a kiosk that sells cupcakes. And
yes.
There definitely is like a trolley car that goes around.
Always a trolley.
But I can you just get on the trolley?
I don't know.
I feel like it might just be a prop trolley, honestly. So, okay. These are like these popular outdoor malls we have here in LA. Like the Grove is like legendary.
Isn't that where the Kardashians go?
Oh my, I don't know. I don't know anything about that. But they're like designed by the same people, I think. They're these outdoor malls and they're made to look like little fake villages or fake towns.
Yeah, I believe the Grove has like a little part that like looks kind of like a farmer's market, or like when you go to an amusement park outside, you know, there's like a building that has like a hot dog stand on one side and a snow cone on the other side.
Yeah, it is. It's called the Farmer's Market at the Grove.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and it is little eateries all around. It's huge, actually. Those eateries are massive. I got lost in there before.
Wow.
Yeah, and then at, I know at the Americana, you can live there as well. They have apartments on top of them.
Whoa.
Yeah, so one of my friends is really an amazing person, and she does a lot of, like, tenants' rights stuff in Glendale, and the Americana is in Glendale, which is a town kind of swallowed by Los Angeles. And she loves Glendale. She's very Glendale pride. And she always makes jokes about living at the Americana.
I mean, honestly, it's kind of a dream. Like, if you thought about, like, if you, like, go downstairs, you can get, like, your breakfast at the food court. Like, if you need your mascara, you just walk down to the makeup store.
It does seem very convenient.
People watching, ooh, chef's kiss.
So yeah, basically this first thing that Americans consider our first mall, the Country Club Plaza in 1922, it kind of sounds a lot like these places. It was an outdoor mall and it featured unique architecture inspired by Europe, mostly Spanish inspired, and there were huge water fountains, lush landscaping, your shrubbery you mentioned.
Yes. The shrubbery.
Relevant. And of course, well-lit and fashionable shops. And its creator, this guy Jesse Clyde Nichols, or J.C. Nichols, he was a suburban planner from the South, and in 1907, he began developing the Country Club district around, like, the Kansas City Country Club, and it was a 10-acre piece of land far from downtown, and eventually it became home to 50 subdivisions with ambling curved streets and wide open space. So Nichols said his goal was to develop whole residential neighborhoods that would attract an element of people who desired a better way of life, a nicer place to live and would be willing to work in order to keep it better. And when I heard this, I was just like, this sounds like coded racism and classism to me.
I heard it and I was like, like a better place to live outside of what?
Exactly. Yeah. And I heard this and instantly was like, oh, so he wants a nice place for white people with a little bit of money to not have to see the undesirable poors or the people of color. Right? Because we all know that by the 1950s and 60s, white flight from the cities meant that the suburbs of America were filled primarily with young white families that fought tooth and nail to keep black people out of their neighborhoods, often with violence. And just because the way this guy worded it sounded so racist to me, I dug a little bit into his life. And I was not shocked to discover that even as far back as 1907, J.C. Nichols was implementing elements of racial redlining and segregation into his developments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So surprising.
Right. Nichols only sold properties to the types of people he wanted around, and he built in deed restrictions, which were legal contracts to control the minimum amount of money that could be spent building a home in his subdivisions, and also forbade ownership or sale to African Americans, Jewish people, and other minority groups. So Nichols marketed the deed restrictions like as a plus, as an asset, to be like, look how awesome this place is. It's just going to be a bunch of white people, and it'll keep your property value so high, and it'll keep out the riffraff. So if your spidey sense went off like mine and Kenna's did with this weird little mission statement, congrats, you were correct. He was just a racist pile of shit. So he's making his little white utopia villages or whatever the fuck. He gets the idea to service them with these types of distinct shopping centers right there in suburbia. So the suburban residents, aka the white residents, don't have to bear the city streets with the other people, aka the poor people and the people of color, to do their shopping.
I was just thinking about this too, because I'm just like, well, before, I'm sure the only place to like get like somewhat luxury goods, like if you want like fashionable clothes or like, you know, something like a special treat, probably before this you would be in the city. You'd go to the city. So with like the white flight out of the cities, you need your own like special, like I'm special air quotes, shops just for the suburbs, just for people who drive cars who can, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly where this is all going. So the Country Club Plaza was built in the suburbs outside of Kansas City, and it was easy to get to via vehicle, and it had lots of parking, all for the reasons you just described. It was closer to middle and upper class subdivisions of the Country Club district, and it was harder to reach via public transportation, giving it an air of exclusivity that, yes, kept the poors away. Every single element, from roofs to fixtures to facades, it was all carefully planned by Nichols. And there were rules for how tall buildings could be and what lines could be used, all while Nichols tried to emulate those European city centers. And within a few years, the plaza had taken off. People were loving this like new exclusive way to shop in the suburbs, away from the undesirable city elements they sought to escape when buying their fancy homes. So throughout the 20s and the 30s, the concept of the outdoor mall in America started to gain popularity, inspired by this one that this guy created. In 1928, the Grandview Avenue Shopping Center opened up in Columbus, Ohio, featuring 30 shops and parking for 400 cars.
Wow. Isn't it wild to think of the cities that used to be like the big cities, like where it was like Columbus and Kansas City?
Yeah. So in 1931, the Highland Park Shopping Village in Dallas, Texas opened up, similar to the Country Club Plaza, but not bisected by public streets. So no public streets would go through it. And its store faces actually faced inwards for the first time, away from the public streets, kind of like what you were describing with the Grove and the Americana. It's like you can't get to them from your driving streets. You have to park, and then you walk in, and then you enter the stores from inside the circle of this little outdoor shopping area.
Yeah, it's like there's like almost like a courtyard, but it's like a huge courtyard.
Yeah, and it kind of insulates the shopping center from the outside world. Mm-hmm. As shopping centers in the suburbs became more popular, major department stores also began to set up shop in the suburbs too. So there was Sears, obviously, and Montgomery Ward. And they opened up these like large freestanding stores with ample parking in growing suburban areas. areas throughout the 1930s and 1940s. And as people became more interested in outdoor shopping malls, developers began to anchor shopping centers around these major department stores with something called a cluster layout, which had the department store at the center and a ring of smaller stores around it. So more kind of what we were talking about, how we think about malls in general. Like you have your big stores and then you have your smaller stores around it. So this all kind of happened throughout the 30s and the 40s, and then it kind of brings us to 1954. So 1954 was the next big development in malls, and this was when the Northland Center in Detroit, Michigan opened up. And it used that cluster organizational system, and it was also the first to have central air conditioning and heating inside of its stores.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and its designer is kind of an important and interesting person. So his name was Victor Gruen, I believe. He was actually a socialist, and he was born in Austria, and he had immigrated to the U.S. in 1938. In Europe, though, Gruen had made art and took part in political subversion, and he'd fought back against anti-Semitism through like clever metaphors in poems and plays and pamphlets. He used his skills as a bricklayer to build and modernize apartments of his Jewish friends who were struggling in Vienna at the time because there was a lot of anti-Semitism there. So when he came to the U.S., he was kind of this like socialist political revolutionary artist dude. And he ended up first doing translations for the cabaret group Refugee Artist Group for Broadway. However, eventually he turned to architecture. Remember, he had that history of bricklaying and building, and he saw in architecture an opportunity to literally build community. So he had this idea where he wanted to bring the pedestrian walking experience of Europe into America by creating a place for community in the heart of suburbia. His goal was to lure American people from their cars and get them to interact with each other. And his vision for the mall was that of commerce, sure, but also of a community meeting place with areas for food and relaxation and green outdoor space. He wanted to connect these malls to residential areas, libraries, medical centers, and other public spaces. He and his wife, Elsie Krumick, they disliked the setup of Los Angeles where they eventually settled. Shops were spaced really far apart, and they had to encounter regular traffic jams. It just made it inconvenient to run errands. And they also hated the lack of pedestrian zones in Los Angeles at the time. So they wanted to create these shopping centers where the pedestrian and the automobile were distinct and separate, and where commerce merged with community and public space. So Gruen's outdoor malls were centered around a spacious green square with garden restaurants and cafes and music stands. There were 28 shops and 13 public facilities in his original plan, which he submitted to Architectural Forum. And it included a library, a post office, a theater, a lecture hall, a nightclub, a nursery, a playroom, and a pony stable. The original plan, though, for his new innovative mall was rejected by editors who did not see the vision.
Wow. I was like, that sounds amazing. I feel like, weirdly, I have been in a mall with a post office.
Oh, interesting.
No, wait, I have been in a mall with a DMV in Portland.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So his ideals sound pretty similar to ideas that are pitched today by new urbanists who want denser, walkable, and mixed-use development in cities with more public transportation and less reliance on cars. In many ways, he was ahead of his time. Gruen predicted maybe even the mall goths of the 90s because his original vision for the outdoor mall would provide a space for bored teenagers to spend time, as well as for the elderly and the unemployed. He also vowed to build for women who were not yet working outside of the home very often. By the 1950s, just 35% of the national workforce was women. And they were usually poor women and not the middle-class women of the suburbs. He felt like women in general, though, were often ignored in design. He wanted the house-related work that women did to be able to take place in a peaceful, tranquil shopping center that improved their quality of life while working by doing like shopping and running errands for the home, you know? He wanted, if you're going to have to work for the home, for you to not feel like you're imprisoned while you're doing it because you spend so much time in the home already as like a homemaker. So he and his wife both acknowledged that sexism had created a stark world for many American women who had no access to public transportation or childcare facilities very easily if they needed to drop their kids off and just go do some things on their own. And Gruen acknowledged that women in the 1950s in America often remarked that their lives were empty and boring because there was nothing to do in the suburbs. Since Gruen himself hated shopping, you can kind of see in his plans that he viewed shopping more as a necessary evil a thing you have to do to survive in a capitalist world, and he sought to find ways to integrate shopping into plans that better reflected community values. However, as capitalism ran rampant in post-war America, Gruen's ideals were slowly chipped away. And 15 years later, all of the spaces that Gruen managed to build into his designs for community and social activity were absorbed and replaced by commerce and more stores.
Aww.
So just a couple of years after this is now 1956, and we see North America's first indoor mall, which is called Southdale. So remember, Gruen's spaces, they were outdoors, they had a lot of green space. But this place, Southdale, it was the first contemporary modern mall as we think of it today, and it was built in Edina, Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis. It was called the Southdale Center, and it launched in 1956. So the Southdale Center had a 2-story design, which is what I think of as a mall. Ours always had 2 stories, as well as central air conditioning and heating, a common area, and 2 major department stores anchoring it. This mall sounds a lot like one of my hometown malls, Fashion Fair. We had a Macy's on one side and a Sears on the other, and the whole mall was in between in a big row. And then the Sears went out of business, and I think now it's just like a gigantic Forever 21.
Wow.
I know, right? Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, the suburbs in America were growing, fueled by racism and automobiles. White flight was happening, and white people who earned slightly better incomes were leaving the cities to buy larger houses away from what they considered the dirt and grime of city living. And their daily commutes to their jobs in the city and back to their homes in the suburbs were facilitated by an increasing popularity and availability of cars. Houses in the suburbs were still off limits for families of color, though, due to deed covenants put in place by developers like that J.C. Nichols guy in the 20s, which made it illegal for homeowners to sell to black buyers. However, even then, if black families were able to purchase, their white neighborhoods often attacked them repeatedly until they left, or sometimes flat out killed them. Suburban neighborhoods of the 1950s and 1960s sometimes were marked with large signs proclaiming that they were a white neighborhood and wanted it to stay that way. Segregation was peaking, and the indoor mall of the suburbs became a key feature of white suburbanization. Gruen had envisioned a competitive nature between the suburbs and the inner city shopping zones. However, he had not predicted that these suburban shopping centers would soon become a way to contain white America from black people in the inner cities. Once malls became enclosed, it became a microcosm for white suburbia, a perfectly contained escape from the rest of the world. And people loved it.
Oh my God, I bet.
Yeah, so just 1 year after the Southdale Indoor Mall opened up, 940 shopping centers opened across the United States.
Wow, that's so fast!
Yeah. By 1960, it was nearly 2,000.
Oh my God.
By this point, critics of suburbanization, including Gruen, recognized that the mall had failed in 2 of its aims. One, rather than supplementing the economy of the inner city, it had drawn money and resources away from the city entirely and drained it. And 2, rather than providing more to do in the suburbs, including things beyond just shopping, it had provided limited activity that revolved solely around shopping. Social facilities were increasingly removed from shopping center designs, leisure was minimized, and consumption was maximized.
Oof.
So I can kind of relate to this. When I was around 22, I was living in San Francisco. I'd already lived in Fresno and Santa Cruz and spent so much time in Los Angeles that I practically lived there too. And I came to the realization one day that aside from doing things like punk shows or protests, which I'd done in my youth, the only real activities that existed as options were to eat and to shop. And it was this really depressing realization for me. And I remember telling my college boyfriend, like, there has to be more to life than this, right? Like, it can't just be eating and shopping. And we attempted to fight it by going to more art shows and dance nights and movies. But at the heart of all of those activities, it still just felt like shopping. You went to the art show because someone was trying to sell all this art. You went dancing so the bar could sell you alcohol. You went to the movies so they could sell you concession snacks, popcorn and soda and candies that you could have bought for way cheaper somewhere else. I felt too old for punk rock at 22, but too disgruntled for adult life, which I interpreted to be synonymous with just consumption.
Wow, I'm baby 22.
I know, so jaded.
I feel like why do you get so jaded when you're like 23 and you have like fucking 60 more years left of your life?
I think that's why. I think you realize, you're like, this can't be all I'm supposed to do for the next 60 years.
It's like I keep talking, I think I may have mentioned this before, but it's like that PJ Harvey song. Is that all there is to a fire?
Yes, exactly. So Lynn Spiegel, a critic of pop culture who was born in 1955, described the suburban shopping mall that developed in the late 50s and 60s as a stage on which to play out a set of bourgeois social conventions.
Wow.
Roasting it.
I'm sure it hurt the mall's feelings.
They probably loved it. They were like, yes, we are.
The mall's like, yes, I'm bougie.
The shopping mall had failed suburban women who were increasingly disillusioned with the emphasis on commerce as a mode through which to live their lives and give their lives meaning. In her 1963 book, The Feminine Mystique, Betty Friedan defined domesticity and consumerism as the two central instruments for the limitation of women. They kept housewives busy while hiding a growing emptiness inside.
Isn't it wild to think about just like how different, like my dad's mom or my mom's mom. Well, my mom's mom always worked. She was a teacher, but my dad's mom was a 1950s housewife.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just think about like if that were still going on today, I'm like, man, I would just be bored at home. Like,
yeah, it's interesting because my dad's family is who probably raised me the most when I was growing up. I identify more with my dad's family, and they were a very poor family. So every woman in my dad's family always worked. Before like industrialization, they were working on the farms. They were working these really hard lives. Like during the Dust Bowl, they were like, the Grapes of Wrath, how everybody's driving around looking for work. That was my dad's family, But on my mom's side, her family was always a little more financially stable, but I didn't spend much time with them or relate to them. And my mom wasn't really super around, when I was growing up. But one of the things I learned when I was maybe 28 or so is that her grandmother had never worked because her husband was in the military, and she was like a stay-at-home military wife. Like her job was to entertain the other military men, and she was just a socialite. That was like her job. Like they would move around the world, all these places because American imperialism, and then she would host parties, and her job was just to host fabulous parties. And she had all these kids, and her kids really started to resent her, I guess, because they were like, you're just partying this like glamorous life where you just cook dinners and drink wine all day and walk around in gorgeous dresses, but you don't do anything.
That actually sounds kind of cool. Like I don't knock anyone who wants to be a stay-at-home anything.
Yeah.
But like, to me, like, if you're thinking about the 1950s, like, maybe you got a soap opera that you like.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, that's true.
And it's like, you're just like, and like, everything is harder. Like, ironing takes forever.
Yeah.
And you do it every day. Although I have read, like, most places that I read say that people do more domestic work now than housewives in the 1950s.
It's really interesting.
Like, they were saying that women now actually do more childcare, more housework, and work.
Yeah, and they have a job outside of the home.
Than in the 1950s.
Yeah, I think the reason why my mother's grandmother, why her children were so frustrated with her, wasn't because she stayed at home, obviously. It's because she stayed at home but didn't do any of her domestic duties. So her oldest daughter was responsible for all of it. So all of a sudden her oldest daughter is being the mom of the house. Her oldest daughter, it's that parentification, I think is what it's called. Yeah, but just for my great-grandmother, she did live a very fabulous life where she just partied at home all the time, I guess. But it is interesting. It's interesting to think about these things. I even, my grandmother on my father's side passed away recently, and I went to her funeral, and I was looking through all of her old pictures and things, and it really contextualized the type of person my grandmother was coming from the era she came from. She had her master's degree in PE. She was a PE teacher, which is kind of cool. But that's a time where people didn't do that, People didn't get their degrees like that, and especially not women. And I don't know, just to think about that, like, she couldn't open a bank account without my grandfather,
Yeah.
She couldn't buy a house.
Yeah, that's so what, like, my grandma on my dad's side, who was the 1950s housewife, before that, she was like, she was an airplane mechanic.
That's so cool.
Like, in World War II, that's how she met my grandpa, because he was in the Air Force.
Right.
Air Force? I believe Air Force. But she was like Rosie the Riveter, like, working on airplanes, and then she was just like, 50s housewife, never worked again in her life.
It's so interesting.
Such an interesting, like, it's so hard to think that it's only what, like, 60 years ago. Like,
yeah.
It's within, we know people who lived that way. Like, stuff isn't that far off.
It's true. It's also interesting seeing just how much American imperialism has affected everybody in the world.
Right?
Like, the people whose countries we destroy, obviously, horrifyingly affected. Also, the people in our own country, how much, like, the women in our lives have had their entire course of their life shaped by American imperialism.
So, yeah.
It's very interesting.
It's like, hard to see because it's like a fish in water. You don't see the water if you're a fish.
Right.
You're like, I'm like, it's like the galaxy brain shower thought.
I'm in the water.
I'm in the water.
The water is the U.S. military. I'm in it. Anyway, so Betty Friedan, in talking about malls and feminism, she explained that the really important role that women serve as housewives is to buy more things for the house.
Yep. Also, like, I was just thinking about, like, how in, like, after World War II, especially with, like, there being more, like, gadgetry and people having more expendable income, there was more stuff in the house. Like, if you think about, like, there's all the 50s, 60s out for, like, toaster ovens, dishwasher, all that stuff, which was supposed to, quote unquote, like, ease women's work, because that's what it was considered back then. But it just made it so women who worked in the home were expected to do more.
Right. And that's kind of what Friedan was talking about. She was linking capitalism to both the shopping mall and misogyny all at once. It was one nice little package, for women. And then just the next year after Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique, which was obviously a very popular book, 1964, that's the year that the town I grew up in got its first mall, which was an outdoor mall called the Fulton Mall. And I don't know why just contextualizing that was really interesting to me.
Wow.
And that same year, 1964 as well, Gruen could already be found vocally critiquing the United States for destroying the essential virtues of urban life: intimacy, diversity, and variety. And just 4 years later, Gruen gave up on the United States completely and returned to Europe. For the rest of his life, he claimed that American capitalism had hijacked his utopian dream and reduced it to, quote, machines for selling.
Wow, we could have had such cool malls.
I know. Gruen rejected any ties to the modern shopping mall that he had developed, saying it was a complete bastardization of everything he had hoped to achieve. But that didn't stop people from still referring to him as the father of the modern mall.
Wow, gosh, the irony.
I know.
Is that how you use irony?
I think it is irony. It's not what you would expect. And of course, the American public and the American commerce sector dove into malls head first. And by the end of the 1960s, there were over 7,600 shopping centers and malls in the United States.
We're number one. We're number one.
So that kind of brings us to the 70s. And the growth didn't slow down in the 70s. By 1972 alone, the number of shopping centers in the U.S. had doubled to 13,174.
Oh my God! It's like a virus multiplying.
It really is. And malls also evolved during the 70s, taking on like new and different novel formats. So there was like an effort to revitalize the dying urban city centers that malls themselves had killed. They created these new festival marketplaces, is what they called them, and they opened them up in downtown city centers. And these were just kind of new versions of malls that were built more on food and specialty retail. And it kind of makes me think about that place here in downtown Los Angeles with all the food vendors. There's like an egg slut. It's downtown. It's like a big open space with a bunch of different food markets.
I am not certain of that. Being from Colorado, I'm reminded of the 16th Street Mall in Denver.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So here in downtown LA, we have something. I think it's called like Grand something, whatever. But it's like this.
Oh,
it's
Grand
like,
Central Market?
Is that the one downtown that has all the food?
I think so.
That could be it.
I'm like
Probably not important.
I don't know. I'm like, I kind of stay in my area.
I know. Downtown, I don't go there that much. But yeah, so in 1976, one of these festival marketplaces opened up in Boston, Massachusetts called Faneuil Hall Marketplace. And then there was also a similar one that opened up in Baltimore, Maryland. There was a couple in New York City and one in Miami, Florida. So this is kind of just like a new take on the mall. And then obviously we get to the 80s.
Peak mall.
The 80s was the era of the mall and the era of Kenna and Madeline being born. I was born in a mall. No, I wasn't. But that would be cool.
Would be sick.
That would be cool if that was true. So shopping center growth continued into the 80s with maximum consumerism being a key defining element of that era. like Valley Girl culture seemed to revolve around the mall, and the emergence of yuppies, which were young urban professionals centered on consumerism in all forms. So shopping in this era kind of became like a competitive sport, with like yuppies trying to shop like to compete with each other and get the newest, coolest thing. You know, everyone was trying to outdo each other. One t-shirt from the 80s used to read, "I can't be overdrawn. I still have checks left."
Oh my gosh. There is an amazing Chantal Akerman movie called The Golden 80s, which is set in the 80s. It's a musical set in an 80s French mall.
Oh, perfect.
And it is like, it is so 80s. It is so like, I feel like, you know, like the 80s was all about like greed is good. Like,
yes, exactly.
it's like very like
maximalism, excess.
Gordon Gekko, although I'm not sure who Gordon Gekko is. It's just the peak 80s greedy person.
Yeah. This was like the era.
Reagan.
Yes. Everyone was like, I'm rich, I got money, and I'm buying shit. We also saw at this time a big rise in personal electronics, which, like, as a market share, more than doubled from 1980 to 1989.
Remember how big Radio Shacks used to be?
Oh my god, there were Radio Shacks everywhere, yeah. The IBM PC hit the market in 1981. Apple's Macintosh came out in 1984. Technology was getting better and cheaper, and people were spending record amounts of money on it. In addition to computers, people were also buying video cassette recorders. Do you remember those kind of? They were like the huge cameras. Then you put the whole VCR style tape inside of it to record on it.
I never had one, but I had friends who did.
Yeah, my friends definitely had them, and we would, at sleepovers, play with them and record things on them.
Oh my god, cute.
There were also pagers. Did you have a pager or a beeper?
No, but my friend in elementary school did. And
that
I
is
thought
so
that
cool.
was so cool. But
That would be the coolest thing.
But also, I was like, why do you need a beeper?
There were fax machines and car phones. The Walkman. Do you remember the Walkman?
Oh yeah, my cousins. And you had to get the yellow one.
Yeah, the yellow one was a cool one. It was a portable cassette.
If you had anything else, it was...
Right. Then there was also, in the 80s, this weird obsession with fitness.
Oh yeah, like Jane Fonda.
Yes. So our coworker Lizzie runs this like funny art Instagram account called Health Freak 1001, which documents bizarre fitness related content. And I feel like the 1980s was just very health freak, like very whatever that is. People became obsessed with vitamins and calcium fortified foods and designer drinking water and no preservative diets and smokeless cigarettes and low alcohol beverages and every fad diet known to man. We saw Weight Watchers and lean cuisine. All sorts of weird toxic shit. There was this strange obsession with MSG being in our food.
Oh, yeah, my mom still talks about that.
Yeah, it was probably just racism, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think it was just racism against Asian people, honestly. There were sports brands, obviously, like Reebok and Nike that had been around forever, but they really started to take off. There was LA Gear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was the cool one. My cousin had that. There was home exercise equipment, Jane Fonda videos, which you referenced, stationary bikes. Like, you could just have a gym in your home all of a sudden.
And don't forget the leotards with the thong that you wear over the leggings.
Over the leggings, the bike shorts with the, yes, that was the look. There were mountain bikes. They were so popular back then. Oh my God. There was, plastic surgery started to get more normalized.
Yeah.
People started getting more plastic surgery. That was also the era where ibuprofen became available over the counter.
Whoa.
Yes, the 80s was a real health freak era. And then there was also just this like influx of stuff in the toy and baby and child kind of sector.
I do think that the 80s was an amazing time to be a child into toys.
Yes, there were so many toys. There was a huge surge. There were fancy strollers and designer baby clothes for sure. But for kids, there were Cabbage Patch dolls and Teddy Ruxpin bears and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Rubik's Cubes and Nintendo.
Like, honestly, like, this is the most millennial thing I will say, but, like, we had cool toys when we were young.
We had sick toys. I was super into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Barbie dolls.
Oh my gosh. Kind of same. I really wanted, there was like a Ninja Turtles van that like shot pizza.
Yes!
Oh my God.
Yeah. But mostly the Nintendo thing was major for me. Nintendo changed my life. Like, I love playing video games. And I remember the day my dad has always been very not great with money. So whenever we got a little bit of money, he'd buy the new gadget, which is why also we were like the first people on my block to have internet when I was growing up. So we were the first people I knew who ever had a Nintendo.
Nice.
So I remember my dad bringing home the Nintendo, and it must have been the 80s still, so I was like 2 or 3, and being like, Nintendo. That started a lifelong addiction to video games. Don't do them, kids. But yeah, basically in the 80s, there was just like a lot more shit you could buy. Like all these brand new sectors emerged for things you could purchase. And people were really eager to buy it, and the malls had it.
Yeah.
And in 1985, Madonna came out with her hit song, Material Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Which really seemed to define the 80s, right? We are living in a material world, and I am a material girl. And in The Wedding Singer, if you watch The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler says, or boy, at the end after that. So in 1986, the year I was born, Kenna was born in the year of the Madonna Material Girl.
That was #1 album.
I was born the year that Consumer Reports remarked that the air-conditioned, sanitized, standardized shopping malls have become the new main streets of America.
I'm Madonna, you're a mall rat.
I'm mall rat. That same year, Consumer Reports also named the shopping mall as one of the top 50 wonders that revolutionized the lives of consumers.
Oh my god.
Yeah, next to things like birth control, antibiotics, and the personal computer.
I think mall is more important than antibiotics. That's my hot take.
Wow. Surveys showed that Americans were spending more time in malls in the 80s than anywhere else except for homework or school. They made 7 billion trips in and out of shopping centers every year, or an average of 4 trips to the mall per person per month.
Wow.
And malls were keeping up. During this era, these massive super regional malls started to pick up steam, which were malls that were over 800,000 square feet in size.
Wow.
Yeah. So that brings us to the 90s.
Ooh.
Yeah, and in the 90s, malls had kind of evolved again, and weirdly, they were kind of going back to some original concepts of entertainment. So they started to include more entertainment elements. By 1992, the American mall had officially peaked, and we had these things called mega malls, which had like over 1 million square feet, 500 stores, theme parks inside of them with multiple rides, aquariums, wedding chapels, and of course, movie theaters. And these mega malls were super profitable. Reports showed that consumers were 50% more likely to buy something at an attraction-filled mega mall than at a regular mall, leading to several more mega malls being built across the 50 states. This wasn't exactly the community element that Gruen had envisioned. I mean, let's be real, it was just another way to occupy shoppers and keep them spending money. But there were playgrounds, movie theaters, concerts, games, and rides, and they all became super commonplace. Kenna, did you ever hear about like a mall music performance? Do you remember this was a thing in the 90s?
Yes. Normally they reference these on TV shows or movies, but where they're like a boy band is like playing at like a mall, like, and they're doing an appearance, or like I think there was like something in like that movie like Drop Dead Gorgeous where they're like performing at the mall.
Yes, I think Britney Spears even played at malls in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely went to a concert at one of our local malls in the 90s. And of course, also in the 90s, that's where we had our mall goth era as a culture. Never forgot. This is when pesky teenagers with nothing to do would go hang around the mall and glare at people while trying to shoplift black eyeliner. And we were mall goths, yes. But there were also like less aggro versions, usually called mall rats, which tended to be like the Gen X version of people who just hung out at the mall and did nothing all day. You remember the movie Mall Rats?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Jason Lee.
Jason Lee's so hot in that movie. Why? Why is he a Scientologist? But yeah, there's that scene where he walks in and he's like, I love the smell of commerce in the morning.
Oh,
you know?
iconic quote.
Yeah, and then there's what's his face? Ben Affleck, maybe? He plays like the asshole kind of yuppie guy who's like, I hate these mall rats with no agenda. They're not here to shop. They're just hanging around. Yeah, so there was like this identity-based element to the mall, which combined with the social aspect of shopping from the 80s. And it's super interesting because it's kind of the realization of the vision that Gruen had for what a mall could be for a community. Like it could be a meeting place, a gathering place, a social place. The only difference is that it manifested in a way that normalized consumption a lot more than I think Gruen had in mind. Like, even as a broke mall goth kid at 12 years old in the 90s, I would still manage to save up lunch money throughout the week and buy, like, a patch at Hot Topic for my backpack every time I went. I was just spending money on stuff I didn't even need. But doing that, even just a little bit, that was just par for the course when you were at the mall.
Yeah, it's hard not to buy something.
It's hard. And a lot of our identities hinged around things we own. As Ian Bongst explains in The Atlantic, the mall makes things real, even if their realness is inevitably yoked to capitalism. That bond is both tragic and liberating, as is all of free enterprise. Goods shackle people in some ways, even as they free them in others. Then there was this like other new thing that happened with malls in the 90s, on top of just like getting super embedded in our identities as people. There was this thing called a power center that started happening, which was basically like a mall that was between 250,000 to 600,000 square feet, but 75 to 90% of the space in it was occupied by like huge destination anchor stores. In 1993, 16 power centers opened up in the United States. And these babies were just like shopping center crowd killers. The super regional malls that were so popular in the 80s really struggled to keep up. Just 4 of those, by contrast, opened that same year. And another huge category that grew for malls were factory outlet centers.
Oh, yeah.
I always think about that Daria episode from the 90s where they try to go to Lollapalooza, but the fashion club gets distracted by an outlet mall.
Yes.
Do you remember? And then Brittany's hanging out the window of the Jeep and she's making a triangle with her finger. And they're like, what's the symbol? And one of the fashion club girls is like, outlet mall. It's a hanger. But yeah, so these kinds of outlet malls started to get really, really popular in the 90s. With 200 of them coming out in that decade. And then as we entered the early 2000s, something happened that changed all of this. The United States grew disillusioned with the mall, and 2007 marked the first time a mall was not built in the U.S. since like the 1950s.
Whoa.
Over 400 malls closed between 2007 and 2009.
Gee, I feel like there is maybe a reason why that happened.
Yeah, there is a reason, obviously. In 2008 alone, fueled by the Great Recession, there were 441 retail bankruptcies, and malls never fully recovered.
Yeah, I feel like so many businesses, like, closed in 2008.
Yeah, it's really true. And I remember, like, we've talked about this in other episodes, but just, like, watching certain whole industries and sectors fall apart. And one of the biggest things for us in fashion was Mervyn's shutting down, which you don't think of as being like a huge powerhouse, but they were a major department store and they had a presence in most major cities. And when Mervyn's went out of business during the Great Recession, it was a huge blow to our industry. And that's what kind of oversaturated the like San Francisco area from a design standpoint.
Yeah, it's funny, like, the age we are, like, there's, like, we think about pre-9/11 and post-9/11, but we often don't think, like, pre-Great Recession and post-Great Recession. Like, I remember shopping malls, economy just being a huge thing.
Yeah, also another thing is that, like, every single year, department stores, there's fewer and fewer of them. Some of them go out of business, but more than that, they get consolidated and purchased by larger department stores. Mm-hmm. So my partner who passed away, Drew, he had clothing businesses that he'd been selling to since the 80s. And he would often talk about how there just weren't as many stores anymore you could sell to. And he would run through the roster and be like, oh, in the 80s, this was one of our big customers, but they got bought by this big chain. And then they just became that chain. And then, and then that chain got bought by this other chain. And now it's just that chain. So basically you have this like triangle effect where you had all these smaller department stores that slowly just got eaten until you have kind of like a near monopoly system where there's just a few major department stores now. And I feel like that a lot of that also happened from the 80s, obviously, through the 2000s, but 2008 really solidified that.
Yeah, and I feel like you don't think about how much monopoly just really stifles, like, the economic prosperity of so many people in certain ways. Like,
yeah.
Where, like, I was reading somewhere where, like, a majority of people actually, like, or majority of commerce is actually done by many small businesses by then a couple huge big business. This is probably maybe not the case anymore with Amazon, but I just think about how many, quote unquote mom and pop stores there would be if not for this drive to monopolize and consolidate. And
yeah. A thing I think about a lot is if you removed like the profit incentive from a society, which I know basically means if you undo capitalism, but if you remove the profit incentive and you have like, even if you removed money, But you just have people starting like co-ops that they run with like their friends and people that they care about. If you don't have the incentive to profit every year, you don't have the incentive to expand every year. You don't have the incentive to grow or franchise or take over entire nations or put smaller businesses out of business. There's no incentive if you take profit off the table. And that means that, like, imagine a world where you have every city you go to, you have all these unique and different businesses that you can shop from and, you know, new experiences, because it doesn't benefit anybody to be like, oh, okay, we are the one electronics retailer in the entire world now. Or, you know, we're putting all of these other people out of business intentionally and we're happy to do it. Like, you remove that from the table when you remove the profit incentive.
Yeah, and it also, the only incentive is quality.
Right, that's true too. So yeah, basically, the early 2000s, we saw a lot happening economically, and the mall kind of started to fail. If that didn't mean consumption was down in the United States, obviously. It just kind of shifted. E-commerce obviously has proven to be king now. By 2018, the growth of sales in physical stores was around 3.7% annually, which is about on par with inflation. E-commerce that same year was 15% up. In a decade, e-commerce has tripled its share of the retail market, and by 2018, nearly 80% of Americans were shopping online. On top of this, increased focus started to go towards those racist origins of the mall in general, and the ways in which they still practice racism today. A Gallup poll from 2004 showed that 65% of Black people and 56% of Latina people thought that racial profiling was really widespread in shopping malls specifically. And Barney's of New York and Macy's were both called out in 2013 for racially profiling Black and Latina shoppers, leading to investigations which found both stores' downtown New York City locations were actively practicing racial profiling in their anti-theft policies. And by 2020, mall vacancies had risen to a historic high of nearly 10%. And we know Barney's isn't even a company anymore. They're out of business.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like a combination of these things, like the hearkening of coming to terms with the racist origin of the mall, you know, the United States in general, like just people really, really being aware and talking about how so much of our history is steeped in racism. And I mean, obviously that's been happening for a long time. There's been like Black activism happening for centuries in the United States trying to point out all of these things. But it is just kind of this interesting situation where malls collapsed on themselves, right? They grew too big, too fast. They monopolized things. They drove out competition. They took over communities. They left few alternative options. They insulated themselves. And then ultimately, they continued like the bad practices of capitalism that they were built on until people didn't really have a reason to support them anymore, especially with the advent of like digital shopping, like e-commerce. So we've been kind of hearing this since like the early 2000s, the fall of the mall or retail apocalypse. You know, I saw somewhere that there was like a video game someone put out where like your job is to try to keep a dying mall alive.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that reminds me of the Tim and Eric movie.
I haven't seen it.
Where they take over an abandoned, where it's like this weird mall.
So, I mean, I love the idea of a mall.
You should watch this movie.
Okay, I need to. Coresight Research estimated that 25% of America's roughly 1,000 malls will close over the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow, 25%?
Yeah.
That's 1 in 4.
Yeah. So if malls are dying, what does shopping look like in the future? Well, there's online shopping, obviously, but in-person IRL shopping, this is kind of interesting. Experts think it's going to be a bit like this. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
More closely connected, more integrated into neighborhoods, more like Europe or Asia, generally located in urban centers, well connected to public transportation, and more accessible. And to me, that just sounds a lot like how shopping was before malls were invented.
Yeah, and also like it's like if you want to go like out with your friends or your family, it's like it seems so almost like clinical to go to a mall, but it seems like you're experiencing your city if you're just like walking down a street and you're like, oh, let's pop in this jewelry store. Oh, let's get a donut. Oh, let's get a coffee. Like,
yeah, you're not isolated from other people.
Yeah, you're like walking down the street. You're outside. Like, I don't know how to describe how it's different, but it's like there's like a weird pressure in the mall to shop, where it's like if you're outside in like a place that just has shops outside in like a cute little downtown, there's not as much pressure because you're just outside anyway. You're just out in the world anyway.
I also think that people are increasingly concerned with authenticity, because if you think about here in Los Angeles, the Grove or the Americana, when I'm in those places, it's kind of fun, yeah, but at the heart of it, it feels very inauthentic to me. It feels like a Disneyland set. It feels like we're pretending at a downtown.
Literally, like, whenever I go to the mall, it's like out of irony.
It's still kind of fun. You're like, this is fun. This is silly. But it doesn't feel real. It feels different than, I don't know, it feels surreal, honestly. And when most experts talk about the future of shopping, they actually envision spaces that combine retail, like, with the original design for a mall that Gruen had kind of pushed for, like with cities. Inner city shopping centers, which would be different than Gruen's vision for the suburbs, but close to where people live, off of major public transportation lines, so they're very accessible, but then also similar to Gruen's vision because they're mixed in with office spaces and apartments and music venues and community resources.
Yeah, it's funny to me how you can sneak in all these social programs, public spaces, and like general safety net things through the mall, through shopping. It's like that's the only way you can get these things into people's hands or whatever. It's the only way you can get these into the public is by disguising it as commerce.
Yeah, so there's this guy, Matt Billerbeck, who's like the senior vice president of architecture planning and design practice at Callison RTKL. And he said, these are things that are more closely connected to communities and more driven by transit, healthier for the environment, more about a variety of choices and supporting cultural events, less formulaic and more individualized, more personality driven. It's a richer, deeper, broader experience. It's kind of the way we hope our cities would look. And I think that's the idea, that these are going to be seamlessly connected participants in the urban landscape.
Yeah, it just seems to me that that's what people want. And it's so funny where it's just like our coworker who is like Gen Z was talking about like, irony is so like gross.
Yeah.
Like new sincerity. That's what's in. I mean, I'm generalizing this.
No, but it's true. That's the thing. It's like people want authenticity and they want sincerity. And I think it's really interesting that now all of these people who are looking at architecture and planning, what they want is they want a return to shopping as an integrated part of a city experience. But they also want to support it kind of the way Gruen did with all of these public kind of resources and services and the opportunity for leisure. Because what they found is that when you create like a hyper-capitalist hellscape, only when capitalism is booming can it be sustained. And the second that capitalism is not booming, like the Great Recession, it all falls apart. And then you just have these vacant skeletons of stores where commerce used to be.
Yeah, it's so funny to me, going back to what you said about when you were 22 and felt jaded, that like the only thing there was to do was shop. I think as we get older in our society, a capitalistic society, people start getting jaded more just out of experiencing it more, where you're just like, wait, is this all there is to life? And as, you know, younger generations see, like, yeah, it doesn't seem very fulfilling. Just, just spending money to get stuff to make you feel better when it doesn't change. You know, if you buy something to make you feel rich, that's not making you rich. You just feel rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's really interesting to me is like, I don't know if you experienced this, but when I was growing up, the idea of watching TV, it seemed like such a waste of time. It was like opiate of the masses, television, like turn off your television, smash your TV, destroy your TV. But as I get older, I'm like, television to me is actually kind of radical entertainment because it's a relatively low cost activity, you know, and you're not like constantly consuming for the sake of consuming. And I'm sure like obviously entertainment as an industry comes with its own issues. But now the things that I would have thought before were like such sellout activities, like staying at home and watching television. In my teenage years, I would have been like, ugh. As an adult, I'm like, that's cool because I'm not spending money.
Yeah, but you know, too, like, I don't think it, like, I think of it more as, like, you know, rest as being, like, a radical act or something like that, where it's just, like, everyone thinks that you need to be grinding, girl bossing, boy bossing, baby bossing, all the bossings around, like, when actually it's, like, you need rest and relaxation. And a lot of times when you are watching movies, watching TV at home, like, a lot of that does touch upon stuff that like really makes you think. Like I think about all the stupid animes that I've watched that have changed my life. I'm like, wow, that was like, I mean, it's silly, but it's like, it's still there. A lot of, like if you think about it, a lot of the stories that we tell stories about how we want society to be, how we want things to be in a perfect world. Where we find the person who gives us all the love we need. We live in a town that comes together when the oil mining company is going to tear down the high school to build an oil well or whatever the fuck. Like, yeah. A lot of these stories we tell each other, we see are like how we want to live in a community. Like how many like cute movies are where like there's a little town where something happens in the little town and like, well, like I was saying, people band together or like a group of ragtag kids like come together. It's like, that's, I think, what we want. And like commercial spaces, I mean, definitely do have the potential to bring people together in like a public space that seems very like weirdly loving and communicative. If you think of loving like in the sense of like you want to expand someone's spiritual well-being, you know?
Well, this is interesting because this kind of brings me into this next thing, which is like, what are people doing with these dying malls that are closing by the hundreds every year? And I think you touched on it a lot, which is that people are imagining the types of places they wish they lived in, and they're fighting to make these decaying carcasses of an old mall work in that system. And lots of them are being converted into mixed-use centers. They're being converted into housing. They're being converted into churches and industrial and office spaces or even school campuses.
I would love to live in an abandoned mall.
Okay, there's some cool examples I have coming up where you can do this. So in my hometown, there are 2 major malls, and both of them definitely were hit hard by the effects of the recession and the fall of the mall. One actively revitalized itself by building outwards into its own parking lot. So it traded parking spaces for instead outdoor shopping experiences that centered around cute little plazas and fountains and movie theaters and eateries. Just places where you actually can just go and sit by a fountain all day if you want, and you're just out in a public space and it's nice to be there. The other is mostly abandoned, but where stores once stood, there are now offices and even a small college, like a small community college, just there on the second floor right next to the old food court. And the main strip of the mostly abandoned mall has people set up little booths like a flea market all along it.
Oh, that's cool.
And, in Fresno, it's kind of like a tale of 2 malls. Like the regular mall that expanded outwards to create these really Grove-like or Americana-like shopping experiences that are fun and nice but inauthentic. And the other mall, which is what Brody from Mallrats would probably call the Dirt Mall. Which is super authentic and super budget, but still really fun and cool.
I feel like that was such a 90s thing. Like there was like the good mall and the bad mall.
Yeah. According to an article in Forbes, solutions require a new shared vision of what is possible, a bit of catalytic capital, and a dose of creative deal-making, civic, commercial, credit, and community leadership. The article goes on to cite opportunities for dead malls to become fitness, wellness, and health centers, job services, workforce training and college extensions, small elementary and secondary schools, daycare, elder care, pet care, mixed income housing units, thrift stores, food and clothing banks, restaurants and coffee shops, presentation, exhibition, entertainment, and event spaces, government services, nonprofit organizations. And some of this has already happened. So the Mayfield Mall in Mountain View, California, that closed kind of early, 1984. And since then, it's been repurposed as a tech office, with HP moving in early on, and now Google occupies the space. In 2016, Google purchased the former mall for $225 million, and they now call it Building RLS1.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's just, it can be transferred just to other industries, which is a pretty neutral transfer, I think. The second example here is the Arcade in Providence, Rhode Island. This is the one I think you would want to live in. This one's pretty sick. It's considered the nation's oldest indoor shopping mall that's still around. And its Greek Revival architecture actually puts it on the list of National Historic Landmarks in the U.S.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so in the 90s, it actually began to fall into disuse and disrepair, and in 2013, it was transformed into a mix of living spaces via micro lofts on the top floor, and local businesses like coffee shops and cafes and boutiques that you can ride your bike around on the bottom floor. And the lofts are way up top, the businesses are below with kind of narrowish corridors to the little small businesses. And in doing this, the arcade has actually fulfilled some of Gruen early dreams. It's become a community gathering place, frequently hosting events like craft fairs and food festivals and even film screenings.
Oh, that's so cool.
It's so cool. And then there's Hickory Hollow Mall in Antioch, Tennessee. That's been replaced with a newer shopping center, which is called the Global Mall at Crossings. However, in this new mall, there's an ice rink, which you mentioned earlier, a satellite campus for the local community college, and a library.
Nice.
Yeah, there's also Cinderella City Mall, which is a great name, in Inglewood, Colorado.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was a 1.5 million square foot mall.
Whoa.
Yeah, that fell into disuse in 1997. Now the space is called City Center Inglewood and is a 55-acre space with its own light rail station, city government offices, residential units, retail, a library, and an art museum.
Wow.
There's Windsor Park Mall in San Antonio, Texas. It's a really angry honk outside. Windsor Park Mall in San Antonio, Texas, which opened up in 1976, but closed down in 2005 and sat vacant for 2 years. Then in 2007, a startup tech company called Rackspace moved in. Now they call it the Castle, and it's the company's main headquarters.
Cool.
There's Via Italia Mall in Lakewood, California. That was a 1.4 million square foot regional center and mall that closed down in 2001. In 2002, the land was purchased and repurposed to create 22 walkable city blocks, now called Belmar. It has 900,000 square feet of retail space, which is 95% occupied. There's an open-air mall component to it, yes, but there's also offices, residential units, a theater, green space, and a public arts program.
That's cool.
Yeah, then there's Cary Town Center in Cary, North Carolina, which was once a 980,000 square foot mall. Now it's been purchased by Epic Games, the people who do Fortnite, and it's their main campus with offices as well as a community space.
Whoa.
There was just a 1.5 million square foot Sears office and distribution center.
Whoa.
Massive, in Memphis, Tennessee, and that has now become Crosstown Concourse, an innovative vertical urban village, which includes theaters, offices, health providers, a YMCA, a college, a high school, restaurants, and 265 apartments.
Whoa.
Then there's the Stonestown Mall in San Francisco, which was a 40-acre site, which was just last year repurposed with the goal of building nearly 3,000 homes. And we've also seen malls become COVID vaccination sites, like the former Sears at Livingston's Mall in Livingston, New Jersey, a Sears parking lot in Riverside, California, and a University Mall in Tampa, Florida. And just last year, a bill cleared the California State Senate that would let developers build houses on most commercial sites without changing the zoning. Now, this is still being battled, but this would be major since there are a lot of vacant commercial buildings like malls and giant big box stores here that it would currently be illegal to build homes on because they don't have residential zoning. And it's kind of a hassle to rezone a whole place, so most developers don't want to do it. But as most people know, California struggles with affordable housing. To keep up with demand, we should be building 180,000 new housing units per year in our state. And that's 100,000 more per year than we've been building since 2012.
Wow.
So being able to easily build residential units on commercial land parcels would be a huge step in getting us more housing that we desperately need. In a 2010 study on dead malls, Vanessa Parlett and Deborah Cowan wrote, "Spatial practice often exceeds the conceptions of designers and managers, transforming malls into community space. This is particularly true in the declining inner suburbs, where poor and racialized communities depend more heavily on malls for social reproduction as well as recreation and consumption." So yeah, while the mall ultimately was, yes, just a place to sell goods, something about Gruen's original goal did somehow manage to sneak through all these years. We did end up using them as community spaces and meeting grounds, places where bored teenagers could just kind of be, places where the elderly could walk in the morning, places where the disabled were assured access. In a sense, the only part of the mall that failed was the capitalism part. And now we have the opportunity to reimagine these spaces as the community spaces we always kind of wanted them to be. Imagining malls without stores is kind of like an exercise in imagining America without capitalism. We just need to picture a world where profit isn't the only incentive to build. The walls of the mall are like an allegory for the walls of our world. Capitalism wants to fill it with junk that you can buy. But if we clear all that away, we have a blank slate we can fill with whatever serves us. Housing and recreation and education and play. Spaces to walk and spaces to talk and spaces to be. Places for public art and places for leisure. The repurposed deal of the mall is a microcosm of the world that we all could have.
Aww.
Yeah, so what do you think, Kenna?
I agree.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to consider.
Malls across America.
Malls across America with no stores. Malls with no stores.
And money.
And no money. And houses. And I think the ice rink sounds fun.
Every mall with an ice rink.
Every mall just becomes a 1,000,000-acre ice rink that we can live above. Does that work?
Yes.
Yes, I like it. That's it. We fixed it.
Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support us even more, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/pickmeupimscared. And for a mere $2 a month, you can access bonus content, such as bonus episodes, and you can ask us questions, which we may or may not answer in an episode or somewhere else. But if you don't want to support us on Patreon, that is all good. We love that you're here. Thank you again.